I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, welcome to the Cultworthy Cinema Podcast. I'm your host, Antonio Palacios, here with two great podcasters. I can't say local like I did last time because one of them is local, but the other one, is local in spirit. They're on the East Coast. But I've got John and Roy of Yours, Mine, and Theirs, a great podcast that I have been a guest on several times. And we are continuing our series that we started last year of Kids in Danger films. So this is part 2, volume 2, part 2, whatever you want to call it. But before we get into these movies today, let's introduce our guests. Roy, John, welcome to the show.
Who talks first?
I will. Hey, yeah, I'm Roy. I'm here in Virginia. And I think something that maybe neither of you know about me is that I love to cook and serve you little deers.
That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, I'm John, and I think we can go 75% local. Just in terms of your opening statement about how local we are. I mean, Roy is across the country, but he's also the whitest, most Utah person I've ever met. So.
I also feel like your listener base is mostly Utah, so it makes me feel better about saying local.
Yeah, no, totally. So it's great to be here. It's an honor to be here, Antonio. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be. I guess we're like the specialists in Kids in Danger films, and I think it's awesome, and it's great to have a foot in the door to do this part 2. Next time, maybe let's do something else. Maybe. Especially after these ones. Just gonna say that.
Seriously, like let's talk about this really fast.
What?
Last year we did Cloak and Dagger, we did Daryl, and we did Night of the Hunter. I'm gonna say more on like the top tier era and level of cinema for Kids in Danger. I'm not gonna say that they were like blockbuster hits, but I don't know what happened, guys. Somehow we went into like the bargain bin for this selection of movies, and I'm not upset about it. But yeah, we need to dig ourselves out next time we do this for sure.
For this wonderful selection of movies.
Well, it's wonderful, but let me just say, I mean, this podcast is called Cultworthy, and
Yes.
I feel like these are all cult-worthy in the sense that, like, Children of the Corn type kids find these as their favorite movie.
Right.
So I originally brought a mainstream film. I picked Annie, and John said, "Nope, not culty enough." And so that's how we ended up with the nightmare fuel that is Hansel and Gretel. So I mean, it's your fault, John.
It is my fault. Well, all for the sake of if there's one thing I like more than enjoying myself watching movies, it's following rules, and I think we've done that.
Yes, we follow the rules.
But it was so crazy to learn that this Hansel and Gretel movie exists, a canon film, and that there are like, what are there? There are like 8 or 9 others just like this.
Yeah, they did a ton of the fairy tales, right? And
the fairy tale theater, yeah.
And we got Cloris Leachman.
And David Warner, guys. Like, that was what excited me.
That was the big thing. When I saw David Warner, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to go MCP all over this witch, and it's going to be sweet.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to put this out there, and please retort when I'm done. But what I really liked about this selection, and especially that I watched them all essentially in a 1 to 2 day period, this goes back to something I said in our last year episode and about a movie that I just had on the show a few weeks ago. And that is these 80s fever dream movies that we watched as kids. That it's like, okay, did I really see this movie, or did I imagine that it exists? It's almost like a Mandela effect, where if you look at the peanut butter solution on Reddit or in the IMDb reviews, 90% of the people that leave reviews or comments all have the exact same comment. And that is, I thought I dreamed this movie, because I would tell people about it and they did not believe me that it exists. But now that we have Tubi and YouTube and people that are uploading stuff to the Pirate Bay and stuff like that, yeah, these were real movies. And the Hansel and Gretel movie, I remember seeing when I was a kid, but there was also like Shelley Duvall's stuff. There was all these different Alice in Wonderland, Hansel and Gretel's that were coming out in the 80s on all the
Public
different
domain
networks.
theater for
Public
kids.
domain theater. So it's easy to misconstrue which one was which. And when I watched this one after Roy put it on the list, I was like, oh my God, this is the one I remember that I just couldn't put my finger on who was in it. You know, what channel was it on? Was it on VHS? Did I see it in daycare? I can't remember. So that was like one of the most exciting parts about this revisit of movies.
Well, how do you explain the nightmare fuel that exists? Is it just like now when you make a kids movie, it's like you have like executive oversight now? And back then it's just like, okay, you know what? No one at the studio is watching these films. Let's just put them out. Let's just assume, just as long as it passes the MPAA, we'll just assume it's for kids, and it could just be about whatever.
Maybe. I mean, not to get on a political soapbox, but I feel like everything has to be either very safe or very pandering these days when it comes to family and child cinema. When in the 80s, no one gave a damn. Like, it was,
Right.
Let's scare the shit out of them. It'll be fun. You know, they'll remember it and they'll want to watch it again. They'll beg mommy and daddy to buy it. That is, okay. Do you guys remember the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies and other movies back in the day on VHS? It had that little FHE Family Home Entertainment logo that would like crawl across the screen.
Kind of written in chalk.
Yeah. Going back and remembering the movies that preceded blows my mind because those were some of the most nightmare fuel movies that I can remember.
So interestingly, not necessarily a cult classic because I think it had some success at the theater. We recently talked about Jaws, which is a 1975 film in which they murder a 6-year-old boy right in front of your eyes via shark teeth.
It's like literally the most gruesome death in the movie.
It was the major blood geyser of Jaws was from like how many
Alex Cantor.
How many quarts did that kid have? Lots.
But so I want to say, like, for the peanut butter solution, I definitely would have remembered watching that because there's no way I would have forgotten about 8-foot-long pubic hair.
Well, and see, that's the reason why I did remember that movie, but we'll get into that. Let's not be premature here. Let's follow the rules since John loves rules. And so we're going to start with John and his film, which was
DC Collins, which we haven't mentioned, but it's the one I was most excited about. And I think I wanted to watch it because I got this mixed up with Cloak and Dagger as a kid.
Yeah, I remember you saying that last time.
Yeah, because like the plots are very similar, and I should have done this research.
Released in the same year. They were released at the same year.
So it's some kind of like simultaneous sort of thing. Like no one copied each other.
DC Collins in it, the guy says, I had my cloak and dagger taken away. And also, like, there's some very war gamesy vibes to it. But also, you and I talked a little bit about this, John. I'm pretty sure, what's his head? Coleman was just kind of at the height of his star power. And he just pulled a dream, a little dream. And he just found some producers and said, I'm going to do whatever I want. And like, okay, go for it. And that's what this film feels like.
It's a
like
Gary
the adults
Coleman
left the room.
Vehicle. Well, I mean, can we call this a kids in danger movie? Because I don't know what Gary Coleman is. He's like in a class by himself as far as whether or not he's an adult or a child. Like he's neither and both.
Was supposed to be 14.
Yeah, they say 14, which that surprised me because I'm like, oh, I would have guessed he was supposed to be like 9, but no, he's 14, which makes sense because he's hanging out with baby Jason Bateman and baby Pamela Adlon, but they're all prepubescent or just at that, preteen mark. So I'm like, okay, I guess that makes sense. Why would a 9-year-old be hanging out with these kids? Yeah, that's right. He's 14.
Is Pamela Adlon the Russian?
Yeah.
She's constantly bending over
Bobby
to
Hill.
talk to him, which is just wonderful.
I did not recognize Pamela Adlon because I know her in real life because I know her as the voice of Bobby Hill, of course.
Yeah.
But the other place I know her is in the Louie show back when we all used to watch Louie.
When it was
and
okay
if I remember right, she was incredibly short in that show. And so there's this massive disconnect that she's twice the height of Gary Coleman, like constantly bending over to talk to him. And I don't mind her Russian accent so much. I think Jason Bateman's British accent is terrible, but the best.
I think that was a choice. I think that was just, he came on the day, he's like, I want to use an English accent. I feel like Jason Bateman's had that same smugness ever since his first day on Silver Spoons. Like, he just does what he wants. That's
Right,
like,
right.
I'm watching him in this movie. I'm like, oh shit, this is his Ozark character, but with a British accent. He's really just, I do whatever I want.
But he had to be international, right? Because that was one of the points they made. Because in DC Collins, one of the fun things is like, can you imagine this wacky school where everyone is from a different country because they're all diplomats' kids, which I think
Right.
is kind of a fun thing to do. It's like, oh, hey,
Like,
look
they
at these
all-
kids get along, and the kids are like giving their dads advice on how to like
Right,
diplomat, right?
And they're like, they only allow like one ethnicity per country in there. It's not like, oh, we have several American kids or several French kids. It's like, no, it's just one of each, which I thought was kind of fun. In fact, I thought they should have played a little bit more heavily on that, because we saw the little French kid, we saw Jason Bateman, we saw the Russian kid, but I wanted to see a lot more. I mean, when 80s were like, hey, let's just throw caution to the wind and have a very blatant stereotype of every ethnicity. Like, I'm not surprised there wasn't a kid with a sombrero and a poncho in there, honestly.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it felt.
Get Getty Watanabe in there,
Oh yeah, seriously.
But yeah, no, I think, but it's a fun school. I mean, I think they were very broad with their accents, and maybe their stereotypes, but I'm okay with it because it's a fun school. And Jason Bateman went way overboard with his bullying, and that's fine because we know it's coming. Where Jason Bateman and Gary Coleman, they come to respect each other and they're friends, which is a constant theme
Spoilers.
that we love. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. But the thing is, it is Cloak and Dagger, because
It
Gary
is.
Coleman comes across, he gets into the possession of an Atari cartridge, kind of like the kid in Cloak and Dagger got in possession of some crazy spy video game that controls things or has secret information or whatever. Gary Coleman's cartridge, I guess, can start a war. At one point, did its 2600 actually connect to the worldwide missile command?
Good point. So he
Somehow,
has
right?
this program has what's called the Pandora's box on it, which essentially gives someone the access to launch all the nuclear missiles at once. So that's where I think it definitely is a kid in danger movie, because it puts the world at danger.
Yeah.
Cloak and Dagger, yeah, he's a kid in danger, but all his cartridge has is plans for an invisible jet. That's,
That's
compared
what
to
that
the
was,
Pandora's
yeah.
box.
As
Pandora's
it turns out,
box is big.
there's lots of kids in the world.
Right.
And if the world's destroyed, that's a lot of them.
I suppose this is the most kids in danger of any movie that's ever been.
Quantity. If we're
Yeah.
going quantity,
Right.
yes.
Right.
So that's a good question. So he puts the cartridge in, and I don't know how a signal's getting out.
I mean, I had a 2600, and it barely you could barely tell what was on the screen. I mean, how can it connect to anything?
So, but this is, I mean, when was War Games made? Was War Games before this?
God, I think War Games was 83 or 84 as well.
I think 83 was War Games. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it
Okay.
would have been just before this.
Okay, because in War Games, I mean, he has like a very old version of the internet, right? Like he can connect.
Yeah, you put the little phone on the cradle and it connects to the internet via tone. What was that called? Like the DARPA system or something like that? That was essentially the internet
Whopper?
before the internet. The Whopper.
Yeah, no. I think it was something like that. It's something like that. Where you actually had to have a phone that was shaped like that, which was the phone you never
Mhm.
wanted to use in your house. It
Mhm.
didn't have the full cradle. War Games, 1983, just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
Okay, Roy, go
Okay,
ahead. Sorry.
you're waiting for me. Oh man, I totally lost my train of thought. So, well, what can you do?
Yeah, Antonio, you don't usually have to edit these, do you? But you're gonna have to edit this one.
Can you edit this? Can you edit a video podcast? I
Yeah,
don't know.
oh yeah, absolutely. I actually edit and then kick it to audio from there.
Oh, okay.
Efficiency.
Oh, right. So yeah, you got the video first. Okay, but the point is, unlike Cloak and Dagger, this movie is also like a Walter Mitty kind of thing.
100%. Yeah.
And so I guess I mean, this must have been a Fox production, right? Because it's pretty much, they parody everything they had rights to do. And I don't know, maybe because it was a made for TV movie, they had some kind of an easier time doing parodies, but there was a lot of blatant Star Wars, Indiana Jones, James Bond.
Yeah, Indiana Jones is Paramount, though. I mean, and none of the music matches. So they do have MASH, but one thing I noticed with MASH is that they didn't have the punctuation between the letters, so I think that's how they got away with it. But
mush or something. I don't know.
Right.
It was like slightly off. But
Yeah.
also, oh my gosh, you guys are killing me. Like, oh, okay. All right. I do remember my last point though. This movie and War Games, and I'm currently watching Iron Eagle. These are all
Ooh.
movies about like government security situations that are so porous, and it just makes no sense because Gary Coleman's character basically receives like top secret briefings from his dad and that other diplomat from the CIA. The CIA guy, right, is just briefing Gary Coleman, and then of course in War Games you can just walk right in to NORAD. Also, you can just dial right in to NORAD, and Iron Eagle, he steals an F-16, but only after his friends steal an enormous amount of intelligence paperwork. So I
guess
don't know what it was.
that's what makes it a kid movie. They edited out all the excruciating security detail that goes with entering some kind of top level government facility.
Yeah, so we don't get to watch Gary Coleman apply for his security clearance. That's edited out.
I love the fact that his parents, who are these diplomats for the UN, and his dad's the ambassador and stuff like that, even in like the most extreme points of we know our son's in danger, they just still leave him home alone and go to like dinners and fancy Thai parties and dress parties. It's like, okay, just make sure you don't let anyone in and lock the doors. I know you just had like secret KGB agents after you, but just make sure you lock the doors.
Well, the CIA guy, he does that thing where he's like, okay, you know what? We want to use Gary Coleman as bait. I think that's the way he says it. We want to use your young child as bait. And they're like, no, we're not going to use our kid as bait. And the CIA guy goes, it's the world's at stake. What are you going to do? And they're like, okay, fine. We'll use Gary Coleman as bait.
We'll use our son as bait. But even at the very end, when the guy drives off with the wrong cartridge, like the adults all go back into the restaurant and just leave the kids outside. But that guy is figuring it out in the next 20 seconds and he's coming back and Gary Coleman's still on the curb.
Right.
Right.
Like he's got a 2600 in the car. He's gonna test it out, but I'm like, oh shit, turn around.
Well, you can probably look at the cartridge and notice that the cartridge says like mutant attack or whatever.
It doesn't say Stilett on it.
Yeah. Also, so I was gonna say that this movie totally rips off the premise of UHF, a movie which came 15 years later.
Well, I mean, I think that people who are now accustomed to movies or shows, let's say like Brian Benben's Dream On, and then JD and Scrubs and Family Guy, the cutaways. We talked about cutaways before. The Tall Guy. We talked about The Tall Guy, where it is like this, this theme of cutaways into these imaginary segments. But what like John said with this one is so cool is that they are all kind of like intellectual properties that he's going into, but not quite. Like I kind of wanted to have like a compilation to play of all of the knockoff theme music that they use from MASH. It's a very, very similar Suicide is Painless song, but it's not. And then the Indiana Jones theme, but it's not, Oh, and we forgot to mention that Hunter is in this movie.
Oh, Fred Dreyer. Is this pre-Hunter?
I think it's pre-Hunter.
Is this where he got his taste for police hunting? Yeah. And he had his female partner with him. That was a big part of Hunter, right? Like the tension with the female partner going on.
I can see him on set. He's like, guys, you know what? These are the most interesting characters in the movie. What if we did a spin-off? That's how Hunter was.
Do you do TV on Cultworthy, by the way? Like, hey, this cult TV show, is that something
I've done TV movies before. We need to do more of those because TV movies, and this is technically a TV movie.
This is a TV movie, yeah.
TV movies are great. I've done a TV movie episode before, and I want to do more. But yeah, TV shows, why not? There are so many like cult TV shows, especially like those 1/2 season hits of the 80s, like Cop Rock and stuff like that. Yeah, not enough people know about that.
Yeah, I've been meaning to try to get into like Space 1999 and Blake 7 and stuff like that. Like, I think I'm finally ready for that. Like, those were things that were too nerdy for me when I was a big giant nerd, but I think I've ascended properly where I'm like, I should be the world's biggest Blake 7 fan.
Hey, since all of his fantasies are about movies, when he is doing the Western, what's that supposed to be? Is that High Noon?
I figure it's High Noon. That's what it feels like to me.
Okay.
And that scene it's weird. There are like just 2 or 3 moments from this movie that I barely remember. And that was a scene I vividly remember. For some reason, when he shoots 5 bullets in the 5 of clubs. and the bullets go right through the clubs. Hold it up to the sun, and you see the thing. That's a weird, vivid thing that I remember seeing. And then I also just barely remember all of his friends playing Atari in his home, and he says, "Oh, yeah, this is a cartridge that uses real missiles or something like that." And I'm like, "Ooh." But
Ooh.
for some reason, those are the only 2 moments of this film that I remember, and everything else was like brand new to me when I was watching it.
Gotcha. So the 5 of clubs was essentially your version of the 8-foot pubes coming out of that kid's pants in my movie. Okay.
Yes, that was totally it. Okay, but I'm just gonna quickly mention, I think we're almost out of time as far as talking
Yeah.
about DC Collins. Gary Coleman, what a one of a kind person. Like I said, I don't know if he's a child or an adult, and I don't know if I find him annoying or endearing, and I don't know if he's acting really well, or if because when I saw him like grow up, I saw him kind of acting in the same way. I'm like, oh no, that's just who he is.
Yeah.
And so I wonder why there weren't more Gary Coleman movies, because he was on fire. And I know there were some, but I think they were very of the moment. I think maybe we need to do the Gary Coleman oeuvre next time we're on. I would do that. He's not necessarily in danger.
Let's start making those lists now.
The one I remember is the kid with the broken halo. Like, I think he's an angel or something.
Ooh, I haven't seen that one.
And there's also the kid with the 200 IQ. I mean, he did a few, right? But my mom had us watch all these Gary Coleman films.
Yeah, no, I just learned there's one. I think there's like a medieval one or something where he goes back.
See, all of these are echoing in my brain, like in the fever dream. Like, I remember like TV clips or commercials for them, but I can't say that I've actually seen them.
Yeah, but I think he's just weird because he's a kid who acts like an adult, and then when he is an adult, it's like, oh, you're still acting like a kid acting like an adult. And it's
Right.
really he's a weird persona, but I don't know, charismatic enough so that when there's one sequence of this movie where I believed it just fine, when he swings down and knocks 2 crooks on their backs, like he swings like Tarzan and knocks them down, and it was like such a great movie moment, because in real life he would have just bounced off them just completely.
So before we move on to the next film, I'm going to ask, is this a play or skip when it comes to finding it on TV? Let's say this is TV back in the day and you're on Channel 7 and it's on. Are we playing it or are we skipping it?
Okay, we're talking about Hansel and Gretel. Is that it?
No,
I'm talking about DC Collins. Like, is this a play or is this a skip?
Oh, okay. Sorry, we're winding up. It's a skip while I'm watching it. Like, while I'm watching, I'm kind of annoyed, but I'm like, if anybody says, "Hey, have you seen DC Collins? Should I watch it?" I'm like, "Oh, definitely. You gotta watch this."
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah. So it's a play.
If we're talking like when I was a kid, if this came on TV, then 100% I'm watching it.
Yeah. For me, it's a skip. I thought it was fun, but if I want a kid in danger movie that is about what it's about, I'm watching Cloak and Dagger 100%. But I'm glad that I was able to watch it and at least, like you said, have the playback to remember like the parts that I saw on TV, but now having like the completion to it. But I don't need to watch it again. It's fine.
It's a play in the sense that I watched it, so everybody else has to. I guess that's one of the ways that I gauge that. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely watching it again as an adult, it was horribly disappointing. Is that the kindest way to put it? It was like, oh, we watched this and we liked it. So
I gotcha. Okay, man. Roy, I can't wait. Let's talk about your movie.
Well, yeah, Hansel and Gretel, because I didn't get to do Annie, and then I moved on to Witches as a possibility. And I've never seen Witches, but as I was kind of looking up,
Witches is a great one as far as kids in danger.
It doesn't belong in this list. It doesn't belong in this list.
I watched it for the first time in a long time, a couple years ago, and it was one of those, Antonio, just like you were saying, like, how did people were allowed to do this? Anyway, that's the Witches. We're talking about Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah. Canon Films, Hansel and Gretel. So you already know the plot because everyone knows Hansel and Gretel. So let's just talk about the real highlights here. And that is that their father sells wood to everyone in town. And the reason he can make money out of it is because everyone else is too lazy to cut their own wood.
100%. Or like, wood is too far away. That's the way I looked at it. It's like, this town is located 100 miles away from the nearest forest, and he's the only dumbass that's willing to go take his donkey and kids and chop wood and take it to town every week.
Yeah. Now, the baker also has this kid who might be the villain of the film. I don't know. All I know is that he stares straight at you while devouring baked goods.
Oh, it's more than that. He like licks stuff and puts it back just to make the two poor kids feel even more poor. He is the villain of this movie, and I loved that character. I love it.
Beautiful...
Okay, I'm gonna be premature here. This movie rules. I loved this movie so much. I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd. I didn't care about repercussions. This movie is the best movie of the list. I'm going to say that right now. But please, go ahead.
Okay. Well, so basically, like the kids have to go get... Okay. Doggone it. Their mom makes a custard because they're filthy rich. And I think they're filthy rich because their dad finally gets the money that they deserved from the baker or whatever. And so she makes a custard, but they let the donkey eat it. And so the mom is so mad. I think in the fairy tale, the mom hates the kids and is trying to get rid of them.
Yeah.
But in this one, she just wants berries. And they go out and they find this huge berry bush. And they should be so happy with it. But they keep going deeper into the forest where like 20 kids haven't come back lately. And they find this house. There's gingerbread man in front of the house. And you just know there's something wrong with those. But then they just start eating the house, right? Anyway, Cloris Leachman, who I remember as the secretary at the end of the Muppet movie, who has the allergy to animals and lets all the Muppets in because she's just, they dandered her to death, right?
You're not going to say Frau Brugge?
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, I mean, she's delightful. And Hansel, who's stuck in a cage and being fattened up, he doesn't really resist too much. I guess if you're in a cage, you might as well just keep eating, right?
Well, the witch had a really good system of keeping both children hostage in a different way.
Yeah,
because
like
both were threatened in a different way, and so one of them couldn't pull anything because she could hypnotize Gretel, or she could, force more food into Hansel or stab him with a stick or something, and so neither of them really had a plan.
I think like she's working Gretel to death, and Gretel only gets to rest when Hansel eats.
Yes,
right. I think that's it, and so her
capitalism,
plan,
baby.
Her plan's a weird one. She obviously wants to eat the kids, but she's going to bake them into gingerbread men. But I think, as we see, all the kids that she has baked into gingerbread men, they're just in a holding pattern in the front yard.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I don't care.
Yeah, she hasn't eaten any kids yet.
Plot hole, I don't care. It didn't hurt me at all.
That's fine. I mean, that doesn't make it less enjoyable. I'm just...
Maybe she's licking the children.
She goes out there and just licks them.
Yeah.
In which case she's just eating gingerbread. But by the way, her house looks delicious. It looks wonderfully delicious. After they turn they turn it on her, and Gretel? They don't push her into the oven. That's how the fairy tale goes. But Gretel gets her magic wand, and Gretel, who I guess had been paying attention
and learning
studying
spells,
learning the spells, she immediately casts a spell on the witch, and what can she do? So she becomes a gingerbread witch.
That's one thing about wands that always bugged me. As long as you rhyme, you could do anything. But the important thing is you rhyme. Yeah.
You just got to hold it and rhyme.
Well, you have to believe it, too. You have to believe the spell. That's like other things I've seen. It's like, it doesn't work unless you have faith in it. I think vampires are the same thing with like crucifixes. It doesn't work unless you have faith in the crucifix, right?
Right.
And this is the same way. That wand's not going to work unless you have faith. But dude, you've left out the part that it's not really like you said, they don't push her in the oven. It's like they tempura her. Like they put her on a
gingerbread tempura,
they dip her in batter, and then they toss her in the oven.
This was the one thing about the movie I liked, because that was the one thing that was unexpected. It's like, okay, we have to make sure we batter the witch before we cook her. That's very important. We have to follow the recipe. We're following rules here, and I can respect the kids for that.
Yeah. So as they're leaving, all I could think was like, take a whole wall with you. You guys are poor. You don't have a lot of food. Just break down a wall and haul it home. But the house starts vomiting. It's got this pink goo just coming out of everywhere.
It, and so Evil Dead 2's us. It like shoots all this goo outside of it. It's so great.
And then the kids trapped in the gingerbread boys, they are all freed. And then the good news for Hansel and Gretel's mom is they now have to take care of 20 kids.
Yeah, but
That's what I assume.
But the wand turns into a stack of gold coins.
Oh, that's right.
So now they're like wealthy enough to take care of the kids. Like, can we talk about the mom really fast? Like, this is like the perfect film for the men matter, masculine red pill movement of like all women are terrible. This is like the perfect example of what they're talking about. Like, dad works so hard, but he's an idiot because he doesn't have the balls to go and get the extra 5 pennies from the baker every week, right? And so she's got like a monopoly on him. She hates these kids. You know, she's making soup out of one potato. Okay, yes, mom's got a hard life, but she takes it out on everybody. She takes it out on the donkey. She takes it out on both the kids. She's got dad's like balls in a vice grip. Now, granted, she does get him motivated to go back and get all the money that he's owed. And more than that, he comes back with a feast. He comes back with ham and bacon and sausage and milk and all this other good stuff. And then, oh, I'm happy now because you finally brought home food and you brought home money. Oh shit, where are the kids? Like, that's where it really makes me laugh.
But if I'm him, I'm not worrying about the kids for at least 10 minutes because this might be the first time she was in a good mood and the kids weren't home. So you got to strike while the iron's hot and then go look for the kids.
I can't argue. I can't argue with that.
Did he? The one thing they cut, surprisingly, because there was so much. I mean, okay. First of all, how long does it take to tell the story of Hansel and Gretel? 5 minutes. Yeah. And was there anything in this movie that wasn't in those 5 minutes? No, not really. Just the battering, really. So, like, that's one thing I kind of had. I'm like, okay, we all know what's going to happen, and that's one of the aggravating things is, and maybe I'm used to the gritty reboots, but this is like the most straightforward.
It's so straightforward. I'm glad you said that because I was gonna say the same thing. Like, it is so straightforward in its storytelling, but yet they find a way to make it a musical, kind of. Like, there's 3 songs.
It's a musical. That's right.
Like, is it really a musical, or are there just like songs that break out? Right?
It's a musical in the purest form, in that they made up the song on the spot.
On the spot, they were just singing about what they saw.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So it is totally one of those. But the one thing they don't show in the movie, even though it's so straightforward and it's still 2 hours long, even though it takes 10 minutes to tell the story of Hansel and Gretel, is David Warner going back and beating up the cook. We don't see that.
Oh, it's disappointing.
And I want to know what happens there. Like, did we see the baker again? Because does he go and kill the baker? I'm wondering if that's what
kills the baker, takes his kid, sells it to the witch.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, that kid's already plump.
Big
plump
ass
enough already.
Man right
yeah,
there.
Plumpy baker kid.
Can I also ask what the father is doing for about a week, looking for them in the forest?
Okay. Yeah. Again, plot hole. I don't care. But yeah, he's out there for a week with no supplies. Like, he didn't bring anything with him. He just brought his stack. Like, his stick is essentially he brought with him.
He's used to eating wood. I think that's his trade.
He's seriously like, guys, like, why are you complaining? I eat wood all day. I'm fine. But no, you need berries and sustenance. Well, I like the fact that David Warner has a song, albeit brief. It's just him singing a song about, hey, I'm a man because I went and did manly things in town, and now I'm gonna go give this stuff to my kids and my wife, and everything's gonna be great until I find out that she, sent them into the witch's woods. Whatever. How about this?
Don't you dare come back from that haunted wood where 20 kids have gone missing until you fill your bucket with berries.
I know. She's so great. Like, okay, I'm gonna say acting wise, she might have stolen the show for me because we know that Cloris Leachman's going to be good. Like, Cloris Leachman's good in anything. And when I think Wicked Witch of the Woods, Cloris Leachman, perfect casting, especially for this time. David Warner, man, he's a villain in my eyes. So it was weird seeing him play not just like the nice guy, but like the pussified dad who's too afraid to stand up for his family. Didn't buy it, but still, some David Warner is better than no David Warner, so I let it pass.
I'm even going to go ahead and give credit to the kid who plays Hansel.
I like that kid. I like these kids. I like both these kids.
Kid actor, not bad. Yeah,
I think the kids are okay. I think Gretel is quite good. I'm like, she's going to be a star. She's going to be our next Shirley Temple. She wasn't, but I think she was really committed to the music and the dancing and the cheery attitude, despite their horrible, horrifying, terrible kill yourself circumstances. But speaking of killing yourself, That was my favorite mom line. Speaking of the mom,
Yeah.
she was kind of a breath of fresh air because this is a delightful children's romp. She's a breath of fresh air in the sense that she is in an R-rated movie. She's an R-rated character. She tells her children, "Go to sleep, go to bed, and if you're lucky, you'll never wake up." That's what she says to her children before they go to bed. Yeah.
So like I've always, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, but one of my favorite like just bad mom moments in cinema history is Dirk Diggler's mom in Boogie Nights, where she's just saying that he's too stupid to do anything and like get your big dick out of here. Like that, beration of him is just so good. It's like, oh, she's such a nasty mom. This lady blows her out of the water. I was like, oh my God, this mom is great. She's so mean.
Hey, I do want to say, John, this is our second canon film in 1 week. As did you? How many people knew that Breakin' was a canon film?
We just published our podcast, and Breakin' was part of that podcast.
Yeah, have you guys seen the documentary Electric Boogaloo about Canon Pictures? Like half the movie's dedicated to the Breakin' movies.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I have. I need to see it again. I think because I watched it not as information, but that's a great way to just be totally canonized. Just you watch the canon documentary, and you just get so pumped to watch all the movies. But it's really all the best parts of the movies, all the boring parts. So it's really good. I recommend that. Have you done documentaries, Antonio? That would be a good one.
Yeah, that's actually on my list. So one of the things I have to say about this and the relationship to canon is how cool their minds worked in the sense of like being non-conformative in the industry. So essentially what they were doing by making these movies, these kids movies, and there's a lot of them, like Google the Canon family catalog, it's ridiculous. But essentially what they were doing is they were making movies that they could play to compete with theaters that were playing Disney films, right? Because Canon owned all these movie theater franchises and they wanted to play their kid movies so they didn't have to play the Disney movies. But because Canon went under and all these different companies bought the licenses, Disney ended up with them all anyway. And so a lot of people saw these movies for the first time like on the Disney Channel, which is where this first played on TV. So there's a little bit of irony to it, but at the same time, I loved where their brains were at, where it's like, okay, we don't have Disney money, but we're still going to make a Disney type movie because kids are going to watch something and parents are going to be like, okay, fine, just put it on, hit play.
Why weren't we warned of the Disney Colossus way back then? Just sucking everything in its path.
Sucking everything dry. We should have known with the Disney Channel, we just knew they were tempering us in Disney at a young age.
You know how in modern day movies we think, oh gosh, this could have been solved by a cell phone? This is another case of that, but I assume this family was completely illiterate because a lot of stuff could have been solved by leaving a note as well.
Well, they didn't have any paper because they ate it all, right? So
yeah, that's probably a thing.
That explains why the dad lost his arm.
I tell you what, guys, I think one of my favorite parts of this movie is the fact that the village scene is obviously shot at like a Renaissance fair or like a Gardner Village type place where, people go and they cosplay medieval times or village life. Like, I'm surprised I didn't see like a gas meter or a power meter somewhere on the side of a building. I was like, oh, this is just the Renaissance fair. This is where people go to buy like turkey legs and kettle corn on the weekends. But it worked for me.
One thing I was also thinking about is like, I guess this is where the trope of the witch comes from. But, so I can't blame Hansel and Gretel for this because they don't have the witch knowledge that I have. But when they're surprised that Cloris Leachman is a witch, I was kind of like, what do you think a witch looks like? That's a witch.
Right. Again, they didn't have books. They were illiterate. They didn't know. They didn't have pictures, Okay, so play it or skip it. I'll go first. I hit play 7 times in a row on this. I loved this movie. Okay, so like when I watch these, it's usually either on my phone when I'm cooking or if I'm on the elliptical bike downstairs. And I think I burned like an extra 100 calories during this viewing because I watched the whole movie while on the elliptical bike because I didn't want to stop it and continue it later. That's how much I enjoyed this damn movie.
Antonio, before I tell you play or skip from me, I will say I watched this movie on the couch and I started sweating. So, so I don't know.
So for me, it's play and force my wife and children to sit down and watch it with me.
Yes.
So
I'm going to go skip on this one. I tell you, there's a faster way to tell the Hansel and Gretel story.
Always the contrarian. Okay. All right. Okay, now it is my turn.
can I ask you what Tales for All #2 means? Was there
Yes,
a movie that happened before?
I'll get into that in a second. So this comes from New World Pictures, Roger Corman's company. However,
Oh, nice.
before it was released on New World's picture, it was a Canadian company that was essentially doing what Shelley Duvall did with Fairy Tale Theater. So the Canadian series was called Tales for All. And they would just do these like weekly or monthly kid movies or fairy tale movies, very Canadian. And then again, with licenses, it just got picked up and distributed over and over. So I have the Blu-ray, and Severin put it out. So that's a grindhouse boutique label. So it literally went from Canada to New World to Severin. Like there is definitely a cult following to this movie. Definitely a fever dream movie. And watching it again, because I watched it last year when I bought the Blu-ray, and watching it again, I tell you, man, this movie is the most baffling thing. Not just the fact that it got made, but what it's about and who the hell wrote it. And cream of the crop, that Celine Dion provides songs for it. Pre-fame Celine Dion. And there's a music video too, which I suggest everyone go watch on YouTube because it's crazy. But yeah, it's the peanut butter solution. So I'm not even going to give the breakdown of it. I'm just going to say a boy loses his hair because he has the fear from going into a house that was burned down and winos were killed. He has the fear. The fear makes him lose his hair. He has extreme depression and probably suicidal tendencies. But the ghosts of the burned down house give him a potion recipe that'll make his hair grow back. But he doesn't follow the recipe. And now he grows more hair than he can deal with. That's a great story on its own. But let's not forget the fact that we have a villain who is an art teacher, who hates lazy kids, who hates undisciplined kids, and he hates imagination. But he's got a great imagination.
He's an art teacher.
And he finds out that this kid's hair can make magic paintbrushes that will make paintings come to life. So not only does he kidnap this kid, but he kidnaps all the kids to become slave laborers to cut this kid's hair and make paintbrushes out of them. But the police can't find him in a very simple and obvious warehouse in the middle of town. We don't even have to like get into all that and how that goes. Let's just say that's the basic premise. Guys, what do you think about this movie?
Okay, yeah, you did a pretty good job. I have no idea really what's going on in this film because like the potion, he did it wrong. So it obviously the ghosts didn't intend for him to have unlimited hair. So are we saying that our art teacher just like it's my lucky day and he just stumbled upon it and he's like, I wonder if this would make magic
That's the way I looked at it. That's literally the way I looked at it.
Well, we could these four brothers, because the art teacher and
art gallery guy,
who I think the four brothers might know, because the art teacher and the guy who dies, who gives the formula, are brothers. They are related, so they must have some kind of common alchemy knowledge. That maybe this is the big key that his dead brother never told him in real life, and that's why he's so mad at all the kids.
Well, there's a third brother too, who is the art dealer who buys his dad's terrible paintings.
Oh, they're the worst. Those paintings suck. So the art teacher, his paintings are lovely. They're just great. Yeah. But their father, who's like, this is family playing tennis, and it's like, that is the worst piece of crap I've ever seen. It's really bad.
So you just enlarged a child.
Yes, that's what
he just makes big child.
It reminds me of the drawings and paintings that what's his name, Luke Wilson does in Royal Tenenbaums and plasters them all over the house. It's essentially that.
So the kid with the hair, he's hooked up to like his head is hooked up to a conveyor belt where they're processing his hair. Now the kid with the forever growing pubes, why are they not processing his hair? Are pube paintbrushes not as good?
I don't think the paintings that come from the pube paintbrushes are they're obscene and they can't be sold. Probably.
They only work on like black velvet paintings. They don't work on canvas, essentially. But that's the other part. Like, again, plot holes be damned. He gets his hair to stop growing just by saying stop. So maybe Michael just didn't say stop to his hair fast enough and it would have stopped growing. But Pube Kid he looked at the hair growing out of his legs and he just yelled, stop! And it stopped. So maybe that was it. I don't know.
Although that does remind me that all of us, as young, almost teenagers, all we could think of is what would really make me feel like a man is if my pubic hair was unreasonably long. Like, I don't know what he was thinking. He saw what happened to his friend's head, and he's like, "I want that on my pubes." So, okay.
Well, okay. Let's talk about that. We left out another important character. That's my bad. The sister.
The sister, I thought she was great. Yeah.
She reminds me of like Kim from
100%.
Cloak and Dagger. I had a very similar vibe to that. But on this last viewing, there was something that was very disturbing to me about it. And that's the fact that Dad says that Mom went to Australia to take care of a loved one or something. But my perception was Dad's a piece of shit. He's a broke artist. He's not a good father. Mom just took off.
Oh, yeah.
And then this little sister is like now taking over the mom role. She's like wearing her mom's robe and she's cooking dinner. And there seems to be like this weird, like, I'm replacing my mother vibe that they really don't dive into. But I found it a little bit unnerving. And then when Mom actually does show up at the end, I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, maybe I am a darker person than I thought, because I thought we were going to have like this weird flowers in the attic type situation where she just wants to be the mom now.
No, that was weird. At the very end, when Mom showed up, I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me that was real. They're like,
Mom's buried in the backyard and he just says she's in Australia.
Well, I'm like, the only reason Mom isn't here is because they didn't cast Mom, is what I was thinking. So I was amazed when an actual actor playing Mom shows up. I'm like, well, if they bothered to cast her, what was the whole point of the Australia thing? I don't even know.
Well, and then the dad doesn't even let them call Mom. He's like, I'm going to call Mom to say my hair is not growing. He's like, no, don't bother your mother. Like, don't call her. He's trying to avoid them getting in contact with Mom. Now, eventually one of them calls her and that's why she does come back. But that was like all just a little too weird for me. Like, why is he trying to get them to not call Mom? Is Mom not coming back? Is Mom dead?
Dad was as surprised as the rest of us when Mom showed up.
He's like, oh shit.
Right. He's like, I thought you were dead. Yeah.
I thought you were dead. Or you just
I guess the job didn't go over. Yeah.
He's like, hiding
now that you're back, look at my beautiful painting.
Yeah. He has to go take all of Mom's clothes out of the girl's bedroom, right? And so yeah. Anyway, that girl's adorable.
She was great. She was great. I thought she would be annoying, but I think she's one of those great mom kids.
Yeah.
You know the kids. They're mom kids.
You know the type.
Yeah.
I was very indifferent on how to feel about his friend Connie, who brings a lot of fedora energy to the movie. He's like always wearing a fedora.
So much fedora.
But when I was a kid, right, when this was on TV, for some reason, I always kind of just, maybe it imprinted in me, I always figured that this was Data from Goonies, right? I thought that was the actor. And so then when I watched this years and years later, I'm like, oh, it's not him. And maybe I'm slightly racist because I thought it's like, it was a little cute little Asian kid. I thought it was him and it wasn't. But he's one of the most underperforming actors I've seen in any movie. And I didn't hate it. Like, he has such low energy in all of his dialogue, almost like Turtle in Daryl, right? Where just everything is just very monotone and low energy. And by the end of the movie, I was like, I don't want this played any other way. Like, this kid kind of nailed it and he wasn't even trying.
I mean, maybe you're finding a little bit of refreshment because that's one thing. Even when I was a kid overall exuberance and precociousness really bothered me, like, all the time. And it's one of those things. It's like something you have to deal with, where they always cast the most precocious, energy driven kid who is just knows they're on stage and projects to the back chair.
Right.
And so to actually have, like, okay, you're going to play the cool kid who knows what's up and everything is going down and everything's cool, and you're going to play it low key. That's refreshing, I think. So maybe that's what you're tapping into.
Maybe. And plus, the kid that plays Michael is exactly what you just said. Like, he is just over the top in his anger and his depression, his frustration. And here's the thing, the dude just lost his hair, right? Like, he just went bald. It's not the end of the world. In fact, I think he looks better as a bald kid than with that goopy mop that he had on top. But whatever, that's just my point of view.
And there's hats.
The opening of the film, I'm like, okay, I know there's baldness involved in this, but right when we first see the kid, I'm like, he's wearing a toupee, right?
This is a rug, right? It's not real.
Yeah,
It's a
so I
unit.
don't know if he's like totally bald in real life. Maybe this whole movie is just like a Make-A-Wish thing.
Oh God.
And it's like, okay, no, I want to make that, and that might explain some of the, because I was going to say, when you were talking about the plot of this movie, I kind of feel like the plot is a bit like the director of this movie. He went to the studio and he pitched something. He's like, I want to make a movie, and it's going to have a bald kid who comes to terms with something, and they said, okay, here is $5.2 million, go make the movie. And then he panicked and made this movie. He's like, I did not think they were going to give me the money.
Well, for a second, I thought you were going with, like, let's go find a kid who's dying from cancer.
I
Who's
started
in the midst
there.
of chemo, and let's make a movie for him. And that's his Make-A-Wish.
The same thing just happened to me. I panicked. I'm
end
like,
of
I
the
don't think I can go there.
At
Yeah.
the end of the credits is like, in memoriam, the kid that plays Michael. God.
He totally did. But he was wearing a toupee the whole movie. Like, even when he had hair.
Yeah, he was.
He was like wearing a toupee, which was,
or they did very
crazy.
impressive, like, out of sequence filmmaking where they like shot it backwards and the hair just progressively got longer or shorter. But yeah. So for me, the fever dream part of this movie that I remembered, that even till I found it again and watch it again for the first time in like 30 something years. I remembered the pubes. That's number one. Like, that movie where the kid grows his pubes out. The movie with the kid with the long hair that gets made in the paintbrushes. But the part that really stuck in my mind, and I even remembered it, was there's the soccer scene where his sister's gotten him a toupee and she glues it on his head, and the big bully grabs him by the hair and pulls out like this long string of adhesive as it comes off. And then these kids proceed to chase him home and chant, "Look at Baldy with his egghead." Like, I remembered that chant, but I couldn't remember the movie. I couldn't remember like the exact premise. All I remember is a kid getting his wig pulled off and then kids chasing him like 5 miles home, repeating this chant over and over and over again. And I was like, they go hard in Canada. Like, bullies are like...
Canada must be a crazy thing for baldness, because I mean, we were just talking about how, okay, baldness, he's just bald, it's not the end of the world. But obviously these kids have practice taunting bald kids, right? And so like the main kid must have witnessed something, and that's why he freaked out so much about going bald, because he's seen kids get demolished, possibly killed by the other kids.
Everyone has a stack of chant cards for any and all circumstance that a chant that's teasing or mocking would be required, whether it's peeing your pants or tripping over your shoelaces or being bald. These Canadian kids are at the ready.
Yeah, and now I feel very victimized that you forced me into a video, like recording of this, because we're talking about baldness. It's not really fitting good for me, and I'm feeling the blood go to my head now.
Yeah. Well, it also feels like his friends join in the gang, right? Like, I'm pretty sure Connie is there making fun of him as well.
Yeah, we don't see him running along with him or at his defense.
Yeah. Also, it occurs to me that if he just waits a week, it's gonna start growing back in.
Yeah, literally, he was crying after 3 days, right?
Well, it wasn't though. I think didn't they talk about that? I think they were like, okay, because it's the fright. It's fright baldness.
Right.
Harem scarum.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, the doctor has a German accent, like he's like, straight out of Brazil or something, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But I knew this movie was the most Canadian movie ever. I mean, and I remember this as a kid. I did not watch it as a kid. I do remember the only thing I knew about Peanut Butter Solution is some kid at church mentioned Peanut Butter Solution and that he put flies in the peanut butter solution. I'm
Oh,
like,
that's
I thought it
right.
was just a heartwarming movie where this kid puts peanut butter on his head and, maybe his hair comes back, maybe it doesn't, but everyone learns to accept each other. That's kind of what the commercial seemed like because I do remember the commercial very vaguely. And I think this was it's weird because it's like one of those movies that is not seen or discussed or talked about anymore, but it was a movie that half of my friends saw that weekend and then it was gone and then it
Yes,
disappeared
100%.
until today.
It did
Yeah.
not make a repeat viewing experience. I remember seeing it one time and then it just stuck in my head for 30 something years.
I guess it's one that does that. But I did not know, and it's one of those that you watch it now and it's like obviously a Canadian import because the film stock looks like weird, like surplus
Yeah.
something,
Well, and it's
It
shot in a
like
weird
doesn't
frame
look like
rate.
the
Yeah.
year. Yeah, yeah. And also like I think I wrote this down because I thought it was so funny. I'm like, oh, this is Canadian because the sister at one point says, because he gives money to the homeless man, which starts a series of events that leads to him getting hair and kidnapped and stuff. But the sister says, "Dad, he's throwing money out," and then the kid says, "But Dad, I felt sorry for him," and that was like two lines right in a row where I'm like, here we go. This is from the very depths of Canada.
Okay. Any final thoughts before we do our player skip?
Well, so I also love that the art teacher went all in on the hair. He created like a hair suit
hair
coat for
jacket.
himself, and I think he has a pet dog that he also gave a hair jacket to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's like the Grinch. He has that little dog that just is by him all the time.
yeah.
Yeah, I hope he at one point he's able to. He should have used the hair jacket to like jump on a building and like change the whole face of the building because
Ooh,
that's what the magic paint does.
it's true.
Yeah.
That would have been
Well,
cool.
and also like the painter wouldn't paint a real place because otherwise the kids could escape, but they got him to paint a real place pretty easily.
And then get the
Yeah, they
fright
just
himself.
But they just okay, okay. I'm glad you brought that up because I was very confused by this, and maybe I missed something. They're like, okay, yeah, he paints all these different places, and that they're magic paintings, and we can walk into the paintings. And it's crazy that this is just kind of an aside that we're just mentioning right now that you can just walk into these magic paintings, and
Well, because they leave it for the last 5 minutes of the movie. They don't even touch it until the end.
Yeah.
right. But and so I guess like all these fantastic places that he paints, they go in and it's a dead end, or they can't go home, and so they can't escape that way. But when they finally convince him to paint a real place that exists, and it's this the building that has the fright that started all the hair loss and everything, they don't go in there, even though he is in the other room. He is like disposed somewhere else. I don't know why all the kids don't just walk into the painting, but instead they make the art teacher go into the painting themselves so that they could see him get the fright and do all this other stuff. But they never escape, even though they specifically mentioned that was a plot point at the
That was the point.
Yeah.
And he gets the fright and he immediately looks like Ming the Merciless.
Yes.
The
He
hair's
does.
gone.
There's some good bald, like everyone who turns bald in this movie, I'm like, well, good shape head.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another Canadian trait. They make good bald people up there.
That's definitely Canadian, I think. One thing interesting, there's a parallel between this and Hansel and Gretel a lot. Two big parallels. The first is 20 children are kidnapped from the
Yeah.
town.
Good number.
So same town. I don't know. Maybe it's just 100 years later or something like that. And then the second thing is, and actually, I think this might be a DC Collins similar thing. I think there was in all three movies, there was a movie net where there's this crazy like net made out of yarn that's thrown on people and they are helpless, which was
It's so heavy. The
a
net.
thing that you tended to see in kids cartoons and movies and stuff. It's like, okay, if a net falls on you, you cannot get it off.
It's
even
over.
though it's obviously the lightest thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Also, do you guys appreciate when he used the magic paintbrush? It works the same way that if you watch Bob Ross, when it shows like the little painter at the beginning, the Bob Ross episodes, where he basically paints the whole thing in 3 strokes.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so it was the Bob Ross painting technique.
Yeah.
So
Was Bob Ross Canadian? We should look into that.
No, but he did live in Alaska for a while, so that's good enough.
Good enough. Close enough. All right. Okay, so play it or skip it. I mean, obviously, I have to say play it because I bought it full price on Blu-ray from a catalog, and it's on my shelf right now. So I can't say skip it because I own it.
Once again, this is a film I would like to subject people to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me too, but I'm gonna have to go with play it for the opposite reason of Hansel and Gretel, because okay, we just talked about the whole movie. If you listen to this just now, maybe hit yourself in the head a few times before you watch the movie, because like try to call the movie. So the movie starts, and it within in like 45 minutes into the movie, see if you can tell me
How the movie's
with
going to
accuracy,
end.
like where the movie's going to go or what's going to happen. Like, is there any possible way? Like, you'd have to be a monkey at a typewriter, one of a million, to like figure out what happens in the movie. And so that's why I say play it.
You're not wrong. Like the third plot structure is so far removed from what the movie starts as that, yeah, you're and the villain, so to speak, isn't necessarily villainous until the third act. So you don't even see that coming either. So it's a good point there, John. All right. Well, I had fun with all three of these, like revisiting Peanut Butter Solution for sure. I had never seen DC Collins all the way through. I just remember like snippets. It was good to see that one because I can like erase it from the memory banks. But I'm telling you, Hansel and Gretel was perfection in my opinion. I'm not saying that it's a great movie. It just did everything right for me. I liked the stupid little songs. I liked the stupid little kids. One of my favorite new bad cinema moms. And Cloris Leachman is good in anything. But the fact that this was a canon movie, that it looks like a canon movie and feels like one too, man, that just really gets the cultiness that's in me to bubble over, and I just loved it.
Now, Antonio, what's the email to email in to your show?
You can do Anton at thecultworthy.com or just DM me on Instagram or Facebook under the Cultworthy.
Okay, I just want all of your listeners who have been persuaded to watch Hansel and Gretel, I just want to take a collection of all the emails you receive regarding Hansel and Gretel, like a year from now. I just want to report back to see how many people feel the same way.
You'll get that response quick. Well, okay, so how about you, Roy? What was your pick of the litter?
DC Collins is my number 3. And honestly, I think Hansel and Gretel is so charming. But I think because the Peanut Butter Solution is so bat poop crazy that I think that's the one that I would watch again soonest.
It's something. It is something.
Yeah.
I agree. Peanut Butter Solution it's the looniest, even though there are so many reasons to dislike it. I think it was the massive swings. Here's the thing. It was massive swings at no ball. No ball was pitched, but the swings still happened.
Like the dad showing up at the end in karate stance. Like I don't know, man. Like little moments like that. But that movie was just so crazy, and it as we talk about it, it feels like there's no way we're talking about a real movie that was actually made.
Yeah, 100% agree.
This is one of those podcasts where we pretend about a plot. We're making it up as we go along.
Yeah,
and we're daring you to call our bluff.
And if you think that Titanic had the best Celine Dion song, the Oscar-winning song, go and listen to Magic Man by Celine Dion, which is the main song from this movie. It is amazing.
That's the one where she's riding her bike through the city following the sugar, right?
Riding her bike through the city, trying to follow the sugar or whatever it was that was being poured out the back.
Yeah.
But honestly though, before I knew it was a 17-year-old Celine Dion singing, I was kind of like, this is a cool song. I'm into this. I think the movie is like coming together right here. I think suddenly this is a moment. And then when I found out it was Celine Dion, I'm like, okay, this kid's got talent. Let's see her go places.
Awesome. Okay, so that wraps up this current edition of Kids in Danger movies. And like we said, if we don't do a higher tier Kids in Danger version next time, we'll do something else. But really, these movies, they're all on YouTube, essentially. You can find them. You can watch them for free for the most part. Go watch them. Experience them for yourself. So, public domain, baby. Yours, mine, and theirs. So this will come out a week from when it was recorded. So what is up? I know you guys just put out your what was it? It was the original films to sequels that you've already discussed.
Because we've already discussed Jaws the Revenge, Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo, and Return of the King. And so this time we watched the originals. We watched the original Jaws, which, hey, you know what? Better than Jaws the Revenge is great.
Yeah,
The
not a lot of
original
people have seen
Breakin'.
that movie, so
Yeah. It's always good to see again. But then we watched the original Breakin' and, of course, Fellowship of the Ring. So that's the one we just barely published just now as we were recording. By the time this comes out, we'll have probably our next one up,
yeah.
which
Do you know
is
The Eight Masters,
The Eight Masters,
Iron
yeah,
Eagle,
Iron Eagle,
and Beautiful Girls?
Beautiful Girls. Yeah, 3 movies I haven't seen, so I had a hard time remembering the title. But those are...
Whoa. You've never seen Iron Eagle?
No, I've never seen... And I know you watched it just last month, so...
But also
and you're
like
watching it again.
3,000 times as a kid.
Right.
How did you
And
not
part
accidentally
2,
just see that
and part
movie at my
3.
house?
That's the big thing. I guess I wasn't... Just if you recall, your house was up the hill, and
Okay.
I'm not going to walk up the hill to go see Iron Eagle. I
Okay,
mean, there
wow.
was Top Gun in theaters that I was going to see, so that's what I was doing. I didn't know any better. I didn't know. But no, on this particular podcast that we will have recorded by this time this comes out, our guest, our friend, Mark De Leon, it's his birth month movies. And so movies that came out his birth month on all of those respective years. So that's why we're doing it. So it's a fun little thing. Yeah.
Cool. And you guys can be found on Facebook under Yours, Mine, and Theirs. You guys don't have Instagram, right? So mostly it's just Facebook?
Yeah, it's mostly... We don't have Instagram. We would consider doing Instagram, but it's... I don't know. We don't.
We tried to maintain a Twitter.
Yeah, we
and,
tried.
It's just so much work. Like,
yeah,
who has that 5 minutes
lost
per
it.
week? I don't know.
No, we don't have that. We don't have that. So yeah, we're on Facebook, but mostly we're on MP3. So hear us there.
Fantastic. Well, always love your show. Love being a guest. I love having you guys on mine. Can't wait till our next collaborations, which will probably be later this year or sometime next year because we're so scheduled out. But everyone, go like, subscribe, rate, review, 5 stars. Yours, Mine, and Theirs, and of course the Cultworthy Cinema Podcast. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure. I'll see you later.